Amy Blaschka made a career offering stories as a service. From her degree in film to her 3 decades spent branding products, places, and people to founding her strategic writing practice, Amy has always understood the power of weaving a compelling tale. These days, she's a social media ghostwriter who helps leaders craft their stories to communicate and connect better by magnifying their reach and impact. Think personal branding meets thought leadership. Amy also writes engaging, original, and authentic career stories for her clients to position them for success and change how others perceive, pay, partner with, and promote them. As a longtime Forbes leadership contributor, Amy covers personal transformation and its impact on career growth. She also regularly creates and shares original content through her popular Illuminate Me newsletter and active social media channels. So you're also a social media ghostwriter. What all does that entail?
I know it sounds like a made-up thing, doesn't it? People are like, what? That's a thing? I'm like, yes, it's a thing. So most people, when you think of a ghostwriter, they have a general concept, right? A ghostwriter essentially is somebody else writing something for somebody else to put their name against. And, I get this a lot. Is it cheating? Is it this? No, it's not. So for a social media ghostwriter, I work with leaders to help craft their stories so they can be more compelling and have better connections with their audience. And really it's using social media to sort of share their wisdom and their thoughts, allows them greater reach and impact. So I don't write something for somebody else. For the social media that I do with my clients, we have a conversation and they talk, because most of my clients are big talkers, right? They are founders, they're CXOs, entrepreneurs, people who are busy, who are bright, who can kind of pitch their way into an investor. They can talk to their customers, that sort of thing, but they have a hard time translating kind of the verbal stories and things that they take into a concise and compelling written post. So that's where I come in. So we have a conversation and I sort of act as a translator. I like to say it's almost like method writing, like method acting, where I become them. I'm when we talk and I'm listening, when we have this conversation, I'm taking copious notes because I'm trying to get down the way that they phrase things, their cadence, their word choice, right? So it sounds like them because it is them. It's their thoughts, it's their phrases, it's their experience. And a lot of what I do is sort of helping them find sort of the clarity among the chaos because they're very busy people. And it's a half hour a week with me where we have a conversation about what's going on in their world. And those are always the best performing posts. It's just being real, right? And it's not the Instagram worthy sort of curated content about the Ferraris and the models and the bottles and all that stuff. It's about the real struggle, because leaders are leaders not because they always win, but because when they don't, they keep going. They find a way through. So it's really important to share that. I think leaders who do that, people can then become, they know them, they like them, they trust them because they're not only sharing the wins, right? They're sharing the reality. So it's a big difference. And on social media, there's a tendency to only share the good. And it's the humble brags. It's like this and that. And what I'm doing for them and what I'm writing isn't copy. It isn't sales copy. It isn't about we did this, we did that. It's really more, I had a meeting with a client, or this happened, or I noticed this, or they have some sort of insight into leadership in their world, whatever it is. So they become associated with that, sort of that thought leadership in that arena. And when I work with leaders, it's industry agnostic, right? It's not that I specialize in this industry, because we're not really talking about industry specific stuff. I mean, it is in their world, perhaps, if they're a founder or a startup sort of situation, but it's really more about higher level leadership things. So, it truly is like, as a leader, what are you dealing with? And, trying to share that. And when they share their wisdom, it's really about attracting their audiences. And that means different things to different people, right? For somebody who's trying to staff up, it might be a CEO who's trying to attract new talent. And by sharing sort of how they operate and how they move through the world, they can attract a certain kind of, employee that they're looking for that will, like, yeah, I get that. For others, it's investors, others, it's partners, others, it's clients, it's, customers. but it's always with that same intent of using social media to increase their reach and their impact in a good way and to draw others to them. It's not about pushing a sales message down somebody's throat. It's the opposite, right? It's the long game, putting stuff out there regularly so people come to know you and like you and trust you and will be drawn to your presence and come to you rather than you go to them.
And you do this through articles, through posts, because you said it's a half an hour meeting. And then what's the result of that?
So it's a half hour conversation, a phone call. And from that, typically now it's most of my clients, their primary platform is LinkedIn, right? That's where it's really where their audience is, right? Where the people are they're trying to reach. So for LinkedIn, it used to be that I was writing many more articles. Now it's much more, probably 95% of what I do for my ghostwriting clients are updates. Those short, like it's 1,300 characters, which for people who don't count characters, it's about 200-ish words. It's the shorter update, the posts on LinkedIn that can be text only, or if they have an accompanying visual, you can do that too. But that's primarily what I'm writing. And they have a hard time. People think, oh, it's just short. It should be easy. It's not always easy. I think many times it's harder for clients. It's harder for people in general to fit it within those 1,300 characters because it forces you to be clear. It forces you to really go, okay, is this what's really important? So they can just talk and talk and talk and talk, and I'll listen, and then I'll take, so you mean this? And it's like, yeah. So it's finding the way to we partner together in that way. So I'm sort of the conduit for them in the written sense, but it's still their thoughts. It's still their insights. It's their experiences. And I feel good about that. I don't feel like I'm not being disingenuous, and neither are they. It's just sort of, I'm polishing up sort of how they present themselves to the world.
So you do not feel like they are stealing your work?
No, I have tons of my own work. So it's not that I come up with an idea and then write it for them. It's what's going on in their world. And it's just finding a way, how would they say this? And how can I help them say it in a way that's concise and compelling? So that's where my genius comes in, is to help them.
What prompted you to begin writing for Forbes? Let's come back to these Forbes articles.
Well, here's the thing. As a ghostwriter, all of my client work is confidential, as it should be, right? It's a long-term trust relationship. So now when someone says, well, show me what you've done for other people. Well, I can't, right? I can't do that. I'm not going to betray their trust, and whatever. They can check out my recommendations, and they can kind of connect the dots and go, oh, that person must have worked with Amy. Okay. But it's really important for me to be able to demonstrate that I'm a decent writer. So writing for Forbes as a leadership contributor allows me to showcase my talent to my intended audience. So it's very strategic on my part, because it's like, I could write, I've written for Thrive Global and I've written for Medium, but Forbes, there's, it's like, oh, okay. And as a leadership contributor, it's like, okay, you have to, they don't just let you do that. So you do have to demonstrate expertise before they will accept you. And then you have to sign a contract. And for me, I've done this, oh my gosh, I think it's I'm in my third year. I'm almost, something like that. But I take it seriously and I do it consistently. So as a contributor, you're expected to do they want you, I should say, to do at least 5 articles per month. You're not obligated to do that, but they would like that. Since I've become a contributor, I've done that consistently every month, 5 articles per month, because it's important. And I think demonstrating my talent in writing on a variety of topics allows potential clients and current clients to have that sort of oh, okay, she writes for Forbes. It's a badge of credibility, sort of that thing that they're like, no, okay. It's the social proof. Like Forbes thought my writing was good enough that they gave me a regular contributor spot. So, okay. So that's important for my own sort of personal branding and thought leadership. And so it's a perfect vehicle for me to do that.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like a social currency, social credentials to have Forbes say, yes, we support your writing. But 5 articles a month is a lot. As a writer, I can say that can be tricky, especially after a period of time. How do you keep your topics fresh? How do you come up with new content so it doesn't get stale?
I mean, I usually have a running tally of ideas. I've learned not to just let them sit in my brain because they can they can go away. So I have a large whiteboard that I usually sort of map out content ideas. I also use the notes section on my iPhone to, if something strikes me, because of course, the best ideas don't come when I'm sitting in front of my laptop. They'll come when I'm in the shower or I'm walking my dog or I'm doing anything except the creative work that I'm supposed to be doing. So it's just, as long as I can capture with a phrase, with a few words, with something that I can come back to. And then, like I said earlier, my brain sort of goes, oh, okay, we can do this. So yeah, I mean, some of it, I think seasonally about, if it's the beginning of the year, what are people thinking about in terms of planning or resolutions or that sort of thing. So there's some of that. And then other times it's just what's going on in the world. So, you have the difference between evergreen content that can be any time of year and something that is more timely, related to a holiday, a business sort of event, that sort of thing, what's happening in the world. Like, when COVID first came out, I was writing about it a lot. And I got to the point where I was even like tired of writing about COVID. I'm like, really? Another one, Amy? Come on. But just trying to find different and new angles. It hasn't been a problem. Sometimes I stress, but I always find a way to do it and kind of think about it. If I've seen and read something like I don't know that they've done it yet, but LinkedIn usually would have like an annual report where they talk about sort of the future of work or something important. And I might use that as a jumping off point, or I read something somewhere else, or a book, or I hear something, or, any of those things. It hasn't been an issue for me to write about. And sometimes I just go back and say, what have I written about before? And sometimes that even prompts something new in my brain to go, oh, but you haven't covered this. Or like I said, like it will come from a conversation I have with my daughter or something, like random, like, that could be something. So I just find a way to work it in. Yeah.
Now, do you write every single day?
Yeah, I do. I mean, now I'll say I create every single day because it can be writing. It's always based in writing. There might be a visual component to it. I might be doing a video, might be doing something else. And the writing isn't always just solely for me. I have clients that I write for, so I'm writing for them, or I'm writing for myself for my, a newsletter, or for Forbes, or for just general content that I put out into the world. Usually I used to do it every day, and then I pulled back and kind of set up boundaries for myself to not do it on the weekend. So at least Monday through Friday, but sometimes it's a couple posts in one day. It just depends on what's going on, or if I happen to be on a podcast or something that I want to promote in addition to my normal content, I'll just say, oh yeah, I did the show or whatever. But yeah, I think, writing every day in some aspect. It really, for me, I mean, and we can probably talk, this will apply across the board, but I have sort of what I call the power trifecta of three things. It's clarity, consistency, and discipline. So I think you need to be clear on what you want, whatever that means to you, for your career, for your life, whatever. Consistency, you need to keep doing it regularly. You need to have that, and then the discipline to maintain that over time. So I like to practice what I preach. So I tell my clients this, but then, I say, well, look, I'm writing 5 articles a month for Forbes for the last 2.5, 3 years. It's possible. And I think it's just really comes down to your behavior. And I think too, it's, you have to have the awareness, and you have to have intention, and you have to marry your attention with your intention. So if you say you want something, but you're doing everything in your power to really prohibit that from happening, there's a disconnect and some incongruence. But if you're like, I want this, so what are the activities and things I should be doing to kind of make that happen? You're gonna be more successful. But I think the other part of that too is to not do the things that aren't contributing to your success, and be okay with saying no and establishing boundaries. And, for me, over the last year, the biggest lesson has been to protect my time. So, and I think it's Greg McKeown, I want to say, coined this phrase, but it's either got to be a hell yeah, or it's a no. And the hell yeah is like, yes, it supports and aligns my goals, what I'm trying to do, this sort of thing, then yeah, you definitely do it. And if it's not, then don't. And don't be afraid to say no. Don't be afraid to like, this person, this thing, this task, this whatever, if it's not aligned with sort of your destiny and where you're trying to go, because most people are they're trying to actively grow and get better. Rather, if it doesn't align with your destiny and aligns more with your history, then you got to just wish it well and be done. So
that makes so much sense. You say that, and I'm like, yes, absolutely. Because we all have that picture, that image of who we want to be 1 year, 3 years from now, a general idea of what that looks like. And I love looking at that person and seeing if what I'm doing right now is getting me there or not. I love the way you put that out there.
Yeah, I think we all know the right things to do. We just need to do them. And it's really coming down to like having a hard conversation with yourself and being really honest to be like, yeah, and there are things, it's okay to change what you want over time. I think people get caught up in like, no, I said I would be a whatever, and I'm not, it's all right. Everything changes. You're allowed to be somebody else and have different goals and move on and move, as you figure it out. And sometimes that comes only from trying things, right? That you have to try something. And then if it doesn't work, you might go, huh, or you do it and maybe you do okay, but you're like, wow, I didn't love that as much as I thought I would. And that's okay too, right? And better as long as you're learning. That's big for me. If my career has been a nonlinear one, but I've always let my curiosity lead me because, either you love it or you're learning, right? So there's no downside to either one of those. And it gets you closer to where you want to go, even if it's not what you think what you thought it was. At least you now know, okay, I'm going to pivot this way and move a little closer to what I want. And I know better now not to do that.
Now, was there a learning curve when you were taking up the different mediums? Because like you mentioned before, you don't just write articles, you don't just assist people with their social media presence, you create infographics, you've created the Ask Amy video series. Did you experience a learning curve? I actually think I saw in your first video that you mentioned that you procrastinated a week or two before getting started with that, if I'm remembering your first one correctly.
I love office supplies. My whiteboard has all different colored marker on it. There's not just black, it's like everything. And I'd like to see things mapped out in that way. And doing, an infographic was just another way to express an idea. Because here's the thing, people learn and take in information, consume it in very different ways. So you could have the same key message expressed in 3 different ways. You can have a video, or 4 different ways. You could have a video, you can have an audio, snippet, you can have a visual that's static, you can have it written. And I've done all this. And I think repurposing your content and showcasing it in different ways is a good idea for people because people take it in differently. Was it hard for me to make the transition? No, but with video, I will tell you this, because video is very much, you're like literally putting yourself out there, right? It's scary for me. And it was even just when I started really regularly putting myself out there with my written content, because you feel very exposed. But I think, video has the added sort of anxiety, of like, do I look okay? Do I have something hanging off my face? Do I have this sort of thing? Are people listening to me? Are they looking at something else? And with video on LinkedIn, way before it was commonplace as it is now, back in 2017, for some reason, I don't know why, but I'm like, okay, I was granted beta access to video at the time when very few people had it. And I hemmed and hawed for like 3 weeks before I actually put something out there because I was so concerned about having the perfect message and the perfect lighting and everything needed to be perfect. And I think a lot of people get caught up in that trap of perfection and you end up, it has to be this. So so you put it off, but it's all rooted in fear, right? And the reality is with video, with anything, nobody is perfect, as we know, Jacqueline, right? Things happen, life happens. And with that particular video, it was like, I think it was a minute and unscripted. And it was my first one. And I just had a seed of an idea about this whole idea that I'm like, oh my God, I've been like putting this off because I'm so worried that it needed to be perfect. But really, what's perfect is just getting it out there, being real, being genuine, being like, yeah, you know what? I waited for 3 weeks and I don't know why I did, but here it is. And it's, we're all perfectly imperfect humans. And that first video did very well. I think because again, it wasn't so much like, oh, Amy, you did a good job. And this, this shaky camera, there were no captions, all this. It was the message behind it. This idea of like, you know what? Nobody's perfect. And it was encouraging and positive and uplifting. And it was more like, we're all perfectly imperfect and that's okay. And, so many people were like, wow, yeah, yeah. So, I mean, whether it's putting out a video for the first time or it's just putting yourself out there to go for something that you think, ooh, I don't know, same message applies in your life and your career sort of thing. It's just, there is no, progress beats perfection every time.
I completely agree that I related to your video. It resonated with me for the exact same reason. When you said that you put it off, I was like, I would do that too, except for I would do that for longer. Well done for delivering that first message and making it so impactful. So for those of us who want to improve our content, to improve our communications, what's one thing that we can do right now to really have that kind of impact?
Okay, so I would say when we think about this or communication, so often we think about ourselves. Oh, what am I putting out there? And that's important. But I think when you're talking about communication, you need to realize it's not about you, right? It's about your audience. So the thing that I can say that will resonate the most for people is to make it easy for people to quickly understand who you are, what you're about, the value you bring, who you do it for, and, what matters most to you. People want to get to know you. They want to do it. If you make them search for it or worse, guess, they're gonna whatever. You don't, this is the thing I say, if you confuse, you'll lose, right? You don't want to confuse people. You want to make it so easy for people to instantly go, that's what she's about. Okay, I get it. And you want to pique their interest. You don't need to go on and on and on. You need to have enough that you cull it down to just clarity, right? You have a clear sort of, this is who I am and what I do and how I can help. So if you can do that, remove all the extraneous stuff, just really keep it to the core sort of takeaway and keep your audience in mind and make it easy for them. That's going to be a huge win.
All right, Amy, we're nearing the last 2 questions that I ask every interviewee. What is something that you have learned during a career reset, during a hard time that has become a good future investment?
I think, the best investment you can make is in yourself. I think so many people go, I don't know what, you're worth it. I will tell you, as someone who's had a very non-linear career, I've worked in corporate, I've worked in nonprofit, I am an entrepreneur, my own business now. I mean, it's really about finding a common thread that weaves that story together that will help you and tell sort of and move you on to whatever's next for you. I mean, so many people I know had to do major pivots because of the pandemic, right? Their business dried up overnight. Now, what do? You have transferable skill set. You have value to offer. You just need to find a way to deliver it in a new way. So I think when you can kind of go through and sort of find those common threads, that's a way to get you through kind of to the next thing, and to help you sort of become your destiny, right? Not the history, and just not that you've always done it this way, that you just have to be adaptable and kind of find what works and find something new to kind of springboard off of.
All right, for those listeners who we've already talked about some of the different ways they could possibly follow your work, but what are some of those, if you could reiterate that here?
Sure. I mean, the one-stop shopping to find all things Amy would be my website, amyblaschka.com. And I'm sure you'll have it in the show notes. So Amy, because there's a lot of consonants in my last name, you can do that. You can certainly find me on social media, on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on Instagram, and now on Clubhouse. I'm on there too. And I obviously write for Forbes. You can follow my work there. And I also share it across my platforms. And then if you're game, I would love for you to sign up for my newsletter, which is called Illuminate Me. And you can find that on all my social platforms, as well as on my website. And it's free. And I regularly deliver illuminating nuggets of wisdom directly to your inbox.
I've already started receiving them. Amy, I love your positivity. I love your messaging. And it is such a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Jacqueline. Appreciate it.
Thanks for joining us. If you enjoyed this episode, please click like below and also subscribe to see future episodes.